A Europe that is and isn't the EU, is and isn't NATO. A coalition of the willing, united by a shared sense of threat, urgency, and purpose, but which cannot have a sole leadership figure. That was Italian political scientist Natalia Tocci writing for The Guardian, talking about the birth of a new Europe. Here's what I think. I don't care if it's EU or not the EU, NATO or not NATO, or willing or not willing. The single greatest challenge, the only real challenge for Europe, is that it doesn't have a leader for itself.
So this is the problem for the EU when it comes to foreign policy. There isn't somebody who's the president of Europe who's speaking for Europe.
There is no sort of government here, that there's no unity, that any decision that the EU make has to be approved by all 27 members, and so everyone has a veto on it. And so it's herding cats, basically, to get anything out.
It wasn't that big of a problem before because previously, the United States was more than willing to take up that role through trade integration, security guarantees, and the inherent cultural connections. The US was the de facto leader of Europe for many years. But it gave up that responsibility in a spectacular way.
The EU was set up in order to take advantage of the United States. If they don't pay, I'm not going to defend them. No, I'm not going to defend them. We will take Greenland to heights like you have never thought possible before. The European Union is horrible, horrible.
According to YouGov's Eurotrack survey, several European countries' favorability of the United States has slumped since Trump took office. Only around a third of the people in Germany, France, and the UK have a favorable view of the United States today. In Denmark, only 20% do. In the UK, Denmark, Sweden, Spain, and Italy, US favorability reached its lowest figure since the tracking started. Now, could this coalition of the willing step up? Normally they might. But here's the complication. The European countries don't just have a policy difference or a conflict of interest. They have ideological differences. Tocci was clear about who would be in this coalition. French President Emmanuel Macron, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the projected incoming German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. In other words, the traditional liberal establishment group. They are in power, yes, but they don't represent the Europe of today. In Italy and Hungary, the right wing is ruling. In the Netherlands, Finland, and Slovakia, they are in the government coalition. In Austria, France, Germany, Belgium, and several other countries, right-wing parties are claiming majority or achieving breakthroughs in elections. The European Union? At this point, their biggest commonality might be that they are all in Europe. Tocci wasn't wrong to say that there's going to be a new Europe. With the United States unapologetically favoring itself over everybody else, favoring bilateral dealings over multilateral negotiations, Europe needs to stand on its own, economically, militarily, politically. And that couldn't be done just by this coalition of the willing. Europe is in an identity crisis. It's trying to step out of US's shadow while figuring out what, as a union, it believes in. Figuring out how to balance the internationalism that is represented by the EU institutions with the rising nationalistic demands from each member states. Europe needs a face. It needs a clear consensus about where it wants to go and how. It's going to take time for that Europe to come out. It's gonna be a prolonged labor. All we can do is wait and see.